I'm thrilled to introduce our next speaker, Jeff Wilke. Jeff is chairman and co-founder of Rebuild Manufacturing, a private company helping to bolster America's industrial competitiveness. He retired as Amazon's CEO Worldwide Consumer in February 2021, after more than 21 years as a corporate officer. Jeff's career includes leadership positions at Applied Signal, Honeywell, and software development at Accenture. He holds an MBA and an SM from MIT's LGO program and a BSc in chemical engineering, summa cum laude, from Princeton. Jeff is an active philanthropist and a mentor of startup founders who identify as female and/or people of color. He is vice chairman of Code.org and the chairman of the advisory committee on supply chain competitiveness. Jeff also serves on the board for Fix, the first US company led by two female co-founders to trade on the New York Stock Exchange. Jeff is joined by Alexander Wen, CEO and founder at Scale. Alex, over to you.
Jeff, super excited to be here chatting with you today.
Hey, Alex.
Awesome. Well, we had you at TransformX last year, and there we talked about a myriad of topics around AI and broader industry, which was a lot of fun. But for this time, we wanted to talk through e-commerce in particular. So you obviously ran Amazon Consumer as CEO for many years and helped build the largest e-commerce offering there is. So I figured to just start out with, we'll talk a lot about AI and e-commerce broadly speaking, but and zoom into a bunch of pieces of it. But maybe first just start with the question: how fundamental do you think AI is to doing e-commerce effectively?
Well, Alex, I think AI is fundamental to doing anything at scale effectively. I don't mean at scale AI. I mean at very large scale. There are a bunch of techniques that many of us who did things that were operationally intensive or had achieved some scale had used in the past, including operations research and a bunch of applied math techniques. But the performance that you get from modern AI algorithms is just better in every way. It's more efficient with computing. It uses data more effectively. You get conclusions faster. You can grow your understanding of whatever it is you're trying to optimize faster, so you get multiple cycles of learning. It's better in every way, and I'd encourage everybody who's tentative about it to dive in.
Well, so when thinking about AI and the sort of like different, maybe let's talk through the different sort of slots in the overall e-commerce kind of architecture where AI found value, or AI found itself to be useful.
Sure. Well, if you think about and actually I should step out. We can talk about e-commerce, but I think this is true for retail commerce generally, including in physical stores. So you have you have marketing and efforts that are about bringing people to a retail experience, whether it's online or in a store. You have discovery of stuff that happens sometimes outside of the store or online, or it happens while you're in a session. You have the process of agreeing to buy something and remitting payment and then any other information that's required. And then you have the process of getting the stuff home or to a business, wherever it's going to be used. And really, each of those I found to be highly susceptible to improvement from AI.
One of the things that we've talked about before is AI in its current form didn't exist when you started at Amazon. Of course, that was that was more than 20 years ago. So no AI, and really a lot of modern deep learning only started in earnest, in the early 2010s, And then by mid 2010s, it was like 2015, 2016, it was starting to seem very promising. And then, all of a sudden, fast forward to now, it's the big thing. But what was so clearly you had to operate and build Amazon without all that stuff for quite a bit of time before it sort of became the thing. Maybe tell us about that journey. When did it become sort of a toy versus a tool versus a sort of foundation?
Yeah, well, let's talk about each of those pieces because I think they're interesting. Start with marketing. And you could go back to the sort of very beginning of bidded advertising, where you had to decide what keywords basically to bid on for sponsored search, and then where to show display ads. And then if you were operating in the physical world, you might have to decide where to put billboards. And all of that was done with kind of rule-based heuristics in the early days that, took some basic understanding of when consumers are more likely to be available, what are the basic economics of your business so that you can decide how much you're willing to bid. And you had to respond, pretty fast, so you didn't have time to do that much computation with the computing that was available at the time. And so that's sort of an applied math beginning. And I'm going to go through each of the pieces quickly because they all kind of had that in common, where there was some algorithm that was employed and that later we found could be dramatically enhanced with AI. So if you think about discovery, so you're in a store, or actually you're on a website and you're searching for stuff, again, we had some pretty interesting early algorithms for search, even before PageRank. And then for recommendations, there was actually a very early machine learning approach called collaborative filtering, which was employed in the recommendations algorithm. People who basically bought this also bought these other things. And that proved to be actually pretty interesting for customers, even though it was a pretty simple algorithm. It made recommendations, especially in things like books where you had a very long tail to the catalog. It made interesting enough recommendations that people were attracted to the site. In the process of getting stuff from wherever the retail store was or from a warehouse to a home or business, again, we used a lot of operations research, so linear and nonlinear programming techniques, optimization approaches, trying to decide first where to put inventory by store or warehouse, and then the optimal way to get it to the home. And you sort of you gave me this arc of AI, and it matches my experience pretty well. Although I would argue the time from 2010 to maybe 2013 was really compressed and very rapid advance in what I saw. So we had the benefit of 15 years of using these non-AI based approaches that were pretty data intensive and algorithmically intensive. And so we had the backbone to be both interested and capable of employing different techniques. And when some of the early work on random forests, for example, and some of the other, a few folks have called them sort of, groups of different AI approaches that, now seem to be collapsing with transformers, as you and I have discussed. But before that, when there were these sort of competing groups, we would find applications for those different approaches across all of these different types of algorithms, and it would make them better. So by 2011, I was already to a point where I could say for marketing, I'd rather have the team that's trying to figure out what to bid on keywords, where to show display ads, maybe even in the physical world, how much money to spend, especially on TV, for example, switching from the old algorithms to ML. We were seeing in the discovery space dramatic improvements that we could make to search and discovery. So in addition to classic search, browse, where you're guiding people through a set of experiences that allows them to narrow their focus onto things they might be willing to or interested in buying. We found the same kind of thing happening too, where we had some heuristic-based things that were okay. And we flipped to using all the data that we had available on these products and using AI or early versions of AI and ML, we were able to make dramatic improvement in the ability of customers to find what they wanted. And then same thing was true on the getting stuff to customers. Really, the thing that amazed me there was it took so long to solve these optimization problems the old way in the logistics space. And so you were limited to sort of getting close and then kind of guessing or using averages to decide what was the optimal warehouse, what's the optimal cost, how best to route things. Because doing that all in the space of click to place your order, and then we respond with a very precise delivery time and assign the methods. So you have a very small number of seconds, if that. Proved to be really hard with the old computational techniques. With AI, you could make all kinds of real-time optimization decisions that lets you go all the way back into where to place inventory in a real-time way that made the operations much more efficient. So, and then as you pointed out, by the middle of the 2010s, we were firmly in the camp of AI is basically winning almost every time we try it against a traditional algorithm. And so then it's like, can you get enough AI scientists right next to the computer scientists and employ these techniques as fast as possible?
Yep. And I imagine that's persisted, obviously. And now that's, there's a lot of enterprises that are trying to get there as well. But that's obviously been probably a source of massive growth in the intervening period. One of the things that at scale we think a lot about, or one of the things that we're known for, frankly, is being focused on the data that fuels these algorithms more so than even the algorithms themselves. And in the e-commerce context, your data is your data about your products, i.e., your catalog. And so we've talked a lot about this, but maybe start out by just talking through the history of Amazon and its catalog, which is sort of known in the industry as being the sort of most pristine, most sublime quality catalog. But tell us the story about how it got there.
Well, it started as a bookseller, of course, and that gave the company the advantage of building a very big catalog. So it knew it had to hold millions and millions of records in the catalog, and so it wasn't as constrained by some of the typical computer science problems that people might have if they optimize for a much smaller set. But as you can imagine, the schema, the column headings for what was important for these items was very different for books. And then as we got into music and movies, you could see it starting to change. So the way you describe a book, it has a particular identifier, on every book that's different from a SKU that you might find on another object. The form factor is very consistent, size and weight, basically in a very tight band versus all the things that you could sell in the physical world. Color, for example, color, size, these things, style, these things don't really matter for books in the way that they do for fashion, for example. And so as we started to get into the non-media businesses, at first the size of the catalog wasn't the constraint. It was we didn't have the right fields to describe adequately the products that were being displayed on the site. And it looks a little goofy if you describe things with the same detail page that you have for a book and it's a kitchen item or a consumer electronics item or a piece of fashion. So the first step was to get out of the book schema and into something more generalized. And the team came up with this thing they called PTDs, or product type definitions, where for each new product type, they would actually create a list of all the fields that you could imagine you'd ever want to use to describe this thing. Not with the help of any kind of AI algorithm or really any statistics, but just brute force kind of surveying all of the data that was available online, and ended up with what became hundreds of these PTDs. And the problem is, and I could see this as we started to expand rapidly into especially the hardlines business, as the more PTDs, the more of a maintenance problem you have, the more challenge you have when there's inconsistency among them and you're trying to display search results for a multi-category search term. They got more and more clumsy, and And then the defects would reveal themselves in sometimes humorous ways. I mean, you would have fields or product description bullet points that had headings that didn't make any sense for the kind of product that you were talking about. So, for example, when we moved into consumer electronics, people want to know if they're buying a complicated piece of componentry for an AV system or something. They might want to know some interesting technical specs. Well, we didn't have technical specs on books, and we didn't have technical specs on videos. So there's stuff that you start learning as you go that was super slow. And I had this point of view before I saw the AI algorithms really working, but I had this point of view that these attributes of the products that we're selling should be emergent and not something that we had to figure out kind of a priori before we would bring on a new product or a new category of products. And I tried to find some statistical methods for accomplishing this, again, like at the very beginning of the ML approaches that we were employing. And I couldn't, it was clunky. But again, in that same time frame between 2010 and 2015, just saw a dramatic improvement in the ability for AI algorithms to take very large data sets on physical products and actually tell you, it's emergent, tell you what the attributes that matter are. And in fact, and I'm not sure this is done yet at Amazon, but I always imagined that you would be able to dynamically change the browse node structure, dynamically change the configuration of detail pages and the specifications, product type specifications that are on those detail pages, as you learned more emergent properties from the items that humans are adding. So in the long run, what you do with a marketplace is you just add stuff, and the AI can figure out where to best slot it to make sense for the customer and to maximize sales. And we weren't there yet when I left, but I could kind of see where that was going. What was really clear, though, as we started to do this, was that the accuracy of the data about the products mattered a lot. So the algorithms were only, and the AI output was only as good as the information that we were feeding it. And the truth is, which really surprised me, but many manufacturers in the early 2010s had pretty bad catalogs. So the data they were storing about their products, was not very accurate. They often would reuse SKU numbers. They would often introduce a new product, like consumer products does this all the time. They'll say, new and improved, and same product, new packaging kind of thing. Well, those would often be conflated in a catalog entry, and that leads to a very imprecise e-commerce offering if you're not sure which one it is. Is it the old packaging or the new packaging? And it matters because customers, if they come to your site and they're not sure they're going to get what you're telling them they're going to get, they lose confidence, you'll lose conversion. So I became really focused on making sure our data was as accurate as it could be, and then employing ML and AI to have these properties be discovered emergently. And that, to me, yields the highest quality catalog. And again, as long as you set up the architecture so that you can scale with the size of the catalog you aspire to build, which is kind of job one, you'll fill that database with much more accurate information, I think, if you focus on those two things.
And on a scale of this is one of, many things obviously that Amazon worked on through the years. On a scale of 1 to 10, in terms of sort of the long-term impacts for Amazon and its e-commerce success, how important do you think the catalog quality, so the quality of that catalog data, as well as the sort of ability to use AI to enrich and fulfill all these attributes on the catalog items, how important were those things in sort of the ultimate success of Amazon's e-commerce?
I mean, I think it's among the most important attributes of success for the company. If I think about the kind of this transition that occurred, and it began, frankly, in the 2000 to 2001 era, with an idea that was simply we should have item authority. And that's what we would call it. So we should be able to know for sure that an item we're presenting to you as a customer, that we know what it is and we can describe it accurately. And of course, it took all the years that I described to get to a place where it was more and more accurate. But organizing the whole website around item authority eliminated the problem of customers having to do the work to sift through a bunch of results that are kind of cacophonous to find, and almost random, to find the thing that they want, which is what some marketplace offerings do. They you would dump all the things into a big holding tank, and you get close with search and then let customers sift through page after page after page of results. That's a prescription for lower conversion. The beauty of having item authority is that you could then say there's one detail page for every item, and you can let multiple sellers list against that single item, but that's an authoritative detail page that you can then market directly. You can have an auction-based, sponsored links, which of course Amazon launched with its sponsored advertising program, so that people who wanted to boost the success of their brands could bid on their detail pages or the brand's detail pages and know for sure that those are the brands that were going to show up. It helped when we got to worrying about counterfeit. So of course, something else that was happening in the early 2010s is that there were a huge number of Asian e-commerce competitors, typically, principally, who were starting to attract customers in the U.S. and Europe. And as they started to come in, it just highlighted for me even more the importance of having the item authority that would allow us, because some of these would list as sellers too on Amazon, and to be able to identify the counterfeits from the authentic merchandise, especially using all the catalog data that we had, was another element of the customer experience that was pretty vital and aided dramatically by AI.
Sounds like there were a number of things that you mentioned there, which is one, obviously it was sort of core to creating the best possible user experience, which resulted in higher conversion, which sort of had all this business impact. It was also core to actually enabling Amazon to build the ads business that is built, the sponsored ad and sponsored listings business that has been core to and search ads and all this stuff that has been core to the sort of success of Amazon, and then also core to the sort of this problem of counterfeits, which is critical to maintaining user trust.
Yeah, and the ads business is totally, you won't have the same conversion on an ad if you send somebody to a whole list of items that the customer has to sort through. If you can let a seller or a brand bid on a thing and know with high probability that when the customer searches in a specific way, it's that thing they're looking for, you're going to get much higher ad conversion. So yes, it led to a better ad business as well as to better conversion for the.
Totally. And so another piece to this that you talked about was this sort of concept of item authority and the sort of the unification of all the different sellers on a per product basis. And we've talked about this before. There's other marketplaces that have not yet implemented item authority, or maybe midway through the process of implementing item authority. I'm curious. A lot of folks try to approach item authority in a very manual way, and this is obviously all about we're talking about AI. How do you think AI actually enables you to do things to build item authority?
Well, look, in a world where people had spreadsheets and ad hoc systems for maintaining data about their products, AI might be several steps away. But in a world where most companies now, either manufacturers or sellers, have at least an authoritative set of data, it may or may not be accurate, but at least they've got a row for each thing that they sell. You're well positioned to employ AI on top of it to make significant progress at any scale. So what that lets you do is it just lets you move faster, deploy less human resources to clean up your catalog along the way, and get the benefits in terms of conversion and customer trust faster. So for me, actually, speed is the is the ultimate advantage. Maybe some element of scale, but really it's at any scale, whether you have 5,000 items that change enough that you worry that your catalog could fall out of sync, or you have 5 million or 50 million items, you're going to be able to move faster and earn more trust with customers if you're using the most modern tools, I think.
And this is an interesting point, especially right now. We're obviously in a point of a fair amount of economic uncertainty, and so there's sort of questions around, hey, what are the is this the right moment to invest in a technology that might be expensive, especially if you're not sure what the ROI might be. I'm sure you had to navigate this a number of times throughout the sort of 20 plus year arc at Amazon. How do you think about that? How do you think about investing in moments of economic uncertainty, and how do you think about navigating that?
Well, there's this. It's so interesting what difference a year makes. Last year we wouldn't have had this conversation, at the conference, and the macroeconomic environment's very different. I think there's an adage that I've heard that is really apt, that in times that are tough macroeconomically, good companies survive and great companies thrive, and then you have to ask, well, what are the key tools for thriving? And I just think if you're operating a company in retail that is more than a boutique, more than a boutique that a single great store manager can manage with a spreadsheet, then now is the time to lean in and make sure that you've got a great architecture for data capture and storage and usage, and the right algorithms operating on top of it, which I think are increasingly almost always AI based, or at least a hybrid of classic techniques and AI. And my feeling is every month you let go by where you're tentative about it is more months later that you're going to have to deploy more capital and a more frantic pace to catch up, because there's just, there was a time when Amazon was kind of the only one in retail that was deploying these techniques this way. That's not true anymore. I mean, in the 2 years that I've been out of Amazon, I've run into plenty of founders and people that are operating tech organizations in some large retailers who are very sophisticated about the use of AI. They may have catalog data that suffers from more legacy problems than I had because we started cleaning it up much earlier. They may have a smaller catalog. Their problems may be different, but there are so many people doing this now. I kind of think if it's not table stakes yet, within the next couple of years, it's going to be table stakes, and you risk the entire franchise that you built if you don't at least keep up. Right.
One of the product decisions that you'd also mentioned sort of in the mix there was the buy box, and this is actually something that we've talked about before as one of those product decisions that sort of it took a lot of iteration to get to the level of sort of beauty and simplicity that you ultimately got to. Maybe just talk through that. What were obviously we talked about it a little bit, but what was the original hypothesis behind the sort of authoritative buy box concept, and what were some of the product decisions that you and team got really right in that process?
Well, I would say the buy box is kind of, at least on Amazon, is synonymous with a single authoritative detail page. So you basically present an item that you're confident you know what it is, you've described it properly, it has images that will make sense to customers, and that will help them decide if they want to buy it or not. It has reviews and ratings, all that stuff's on the detail page. But if you're going to open your store up to multiple sellers, you have to make it simple for customers to identify the offer that they want to select if they've decided that's the thing they want to buy. And the evolution of the buy box was just a way to take this space that before you had item authority was just how you buy on each detail page, but the detail pages may be duplicated, to using the buy box and some of the other features that are in it or just below it as a way to drill into all the offers that might be available. At first, we just had a single offer shown in the buy box, and that persisted actually for more than a decade after we began to do the item authority work. And it worked for a long time. You basically had an offer that was free shipping. It was typically the lowest price as long as it was available immediately and from a highly rated seller. Super simple. But what happened over time is we started to have a proliferation of different kinds of offers. So for example, you might have something that is shipping from China and would take 2 or 3 weeks to get to the US. But if the customer is willing to wait, the cost was way lower than something that could be shipped immediately and delivered tomorrow. And we didn't have a great way to give customers those trade-offs for highly rated offers. So we went back and spent actually 3 or 4 years re-architecting the way the buy box worked, the way offers worked, the way the schema worked, so that you could present multiple offers at the same time in the buy box. This is important for regional offers. So for example, one of the things you'll see on Amazon is a persistent address as a location widget. It's very simple. It's in the nav. But that was really important because before that was launched, we were guessing where people were. And in fact, you'd often default to like the center of the country. There was some city in Kansas, I think, that's actually the geographic center. And that would be like literally all the algorithms would use that as the assumption of where the thing was going to be shipped. It's way better to just ask the customer or just say, here's where we think you are, change it if you like, and then have the items that appear or the offers that appear in the buy box adjust and be relevant based on your understanding of where the customer is. And so we had to do a lot of work to get all that right. But it began with having the buy box be a way to, once you had item authority, to get to multiple offers that were taking advantage of that.
Yep. You talked about how this was one of the most important, product decisions or product features or underlying functionalities that enabled the success of Amazon. I'm curious, what were some of the others?
Well, look, I think the logistics capability that Amazon has is pretty remarkable. I'm partial to it because I helped to build it in the early days, but that team just accomplished some really amazing things over 20 years. And, it allowed Amazon to continue to scale in terms of the breadth of the catalog that they could support with direct delivery, the number of sellers who could just send stuff. I mean, if you think about the FBA business, it's not Amazon ordering things from a vendor so that they can decide what to have in their store. It's just trucks show up with fulfillment by Amazon stuff, and you have to kind of anticipate the amount of warehouse space you're going to need. And many of the folks that are watching will know that Amazon spent tens of billions of dollars in capital over the last couple of years to build warehouses just in case. Now, the challenge with this, of course, is that if you hit a slowdown, which happened over the last year, you may be overbuilt. But my thinking was always that you'd rather have the insurance policy to protect the customer experience and make sure you could accept the inbound from sellers than to be cutting it too close to the razor's edge. And then you just assume that as you grow, you'll be able to grow into the additional capacity that you have.
Yep. So we talked about a bunch of different interesting sort of advancements that you all came up with at Amazon. One is sort of the item authority catalog. One is this sort of rich product information that enabled better search and discovery. And then there's logistics, of course. What's sort of the thread that you think ties those all together, or at least these seem like very disparate innovations. So how did Amazon sort of come up with all of them?
I think the thread is competence in computer science and a deeply analytical culture. And even if you're a retailer, often you'll think about the merchants are the most important, and kind of the brand and the look and feel, and all of that matters. But I would argue in today's world, you have to be competent in tech, or you just are going to fall further and further behind those who are. Of course, there are going to be luxury boutiques and small experiences that are highly tuned that don't need to have all of that technical sophistication. But I would argue that by and large, those are going to be the minority of experiences. I think consumers have come to expect the kind of precision that you only get when you're sophisticated at technology.
Yep, 100%. I'm curious of these, going back to the catalog piece, there were, now that I'm thinking about it, there's sort of two components that we mentioned. One is the item authority catalog, and the other piece was sort of what we talked about, which is using machine learning to pull out a lot of the rich attributes from an individual page. Comparatively, what was sort of the relative value of those two things? Like how did that play out over time?
Well, I think they're coupled. I think deciding to have an authoritative catalog is kind of the item authority piece. And then how you go about making sure that it's authoritative when it comes out and then it adapts to the changes that are coming in, it goes to what tools do you employ to grant that assurance. And I found that AI is far and away the best tool to ensure that an authoritative catalog remains so.
Right. Well, what are some of the biggest trends that you foresee in the world of sort of e-commerce and retail, even just generally? Like what does the future hold?
Well, to me, the most important thing is that, and this has been around for a little while with names like omni-channel retail, but I think this notion that e-commerce is one thing and physical stores are another thing is antiquated. I don't know any customers who wake up in the morning and go, what am I going to buy online today? The customers that I met and all of my friends and the way my family behaves is you wake up and you say, what do I need? And where can I go to get that most efficiently? And sometimes you're in a mood where you want to browse and play, and sometimes that's okay online, but often you're going to want to be in a physical location for that. Sometimes you're away from your home and you want to order as efficiently as possible, and you don't want to browse through a bunch of stuff. You just want to search and find it. In that case, a mobile app that's super good with great item authority to let you get in and out really fast, you might call it a spearfishing kind of shopping session, is really important. And behind that customer experience or the front end experience is the question of where is the inventory that fulfills that experience. And my argument for a while has been that inventory is going to be serving both stores and direct to consumer delivery in an increasingly fluid and dynamic way over time. And to me, that's the most interesting trend is how, if you're a larger retailer and you've thought of your world as a physical store world and reluctantly did some e-commerce stuff because it seemed to be growing fast, over time, I think you want to optimize how the back end of inventory storage, logistics, stocking your stores, and getting things to customers can be optimized to be one great system with the help of great computer science and AI. To me, that's the biggest trend, is this sort of kind of consolidation of these various models into a system that simply moves items from manufacturing locations, factories in the world, to the homes and businesses that want those items for their use.
And in that transition, I can make guesses, but like in this transition to, whether it's omni-channel or just sort of like a more unified buying experience, what are the key leverage points that you think AI will play, where AI will play a huge role?
I think it's all the ones we talked about. It's marketing, discovery, the transactional experience, and then the logistics. And I can see more and more opportunities to do some strategy. I would call it kind of topology strategy work with the help of AI. So I think increasingly we're going to have the ability to optimize the networks that we operate, the placement of inventory, and that sort of planning stuff that happens before a sale in more sophisticated ways. So there'll be less guesswork, which means return on invested capital should go up. The amount of inventory in the system should go down. Inventory turns in retail, in my opinion, are way too low, awful. In the world, on average, they turn, I don't know, somewhere between 2 and 4 times, which makes no sense to me. There's 24 trillion or so of inventory of retail sales every year in the world. And if inventory turns 4 times, that means there's $6 trillion of cash in stuff that's already made, sitting in warehouses, basically in mattresses around the world. If you could go from 4 turns to 8 turns, you would take $3 trillion of inventory out of the worldwide system and free that capital up for deployment in all kinds of other more productive things. And that's actually, to me, this will be the monitor that I would watch. Is overall, not because people are doing crazy things to get inventory off their balance sheet, not because they're forcing all the work onto their suppliers, all the short-term stuff that many of us did over 30 years, but real fundamental change to the efficiency of supply chains will lead, I think, to dramatic improvement in inventory turns, and then again, consequently freeing up all that capital for further investment.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that all comes from being able to better estimate, the sort of projected demand and matching that with supply, and then having confidence in those estimates. There's a great analogy that another speaker had as we were filming these, which is like, we were talking about climate change and sustainability is a broad problem, and it was like, do you think that every HVAC system in every building around the world is well set up? Obviously not. Is incredibly wasteful. And then another example is that one in every 3 fish that get caught end up getting thrown away or going bad or in some way. And so the sort of this metric that you mentioned, this sort of like inventory turns, is a great example of sort of this global issue around how do we better utilize our resources and not have to have so much sort of slack in the system to deal with variability in demand.
Yeah, and that cash that's freed up for society can go to wellness and hunger and education and environmental sustainability. I mean, there's so much that we can do that's better for the long-term future of humanity than put cash into mattresses.
Totally. What as we think about the AI ecosystem, you actually know scale and what we do pretty darn well, better than almost anyone. What are the ways in which you think scale can work with e-commerce players to transform their businesses?
Well, I think we've hit on a number of those things. I think, as you've pointed out a couple of times, scale has this great focus on helping companies to improve the quality of their data and the usability of their data. And I think all of the stuff we've talked about starts with that. So, and because scale has seen so many different applications of AI across so many different kinds of companies, I think it's really well positioned to help a company assess kind of where it is, what's the state of its data, what's the state of its systems, what's its kind of capability and preparedness to use sophisticated algorithms. And then, as I know, you're building a whole suite of capabilities and tools that will let companies that range from much less sophisticated to really sophisticated and wanting to be world class to employ AI really effectively and efficiently. And you have, for some of the human in the loop processes that are necessary to clean data, to improve the use of that data in the early algorithms, to modify the algorithms to make them more effective, you all can sort of provide that labor at the time, just the time that the company's going to need that support, so that they don't have to build up that capability and learn how to do it all themselves, one at a time. So I think the suite of capabilities that you're offering is incredibly valuable for this world, the retail world, and I'm hoping that more CTOs and CEOs from that world talk to you.
Yeah, maybe to close, we've had lots of open-ended conversations about artificial intelligence, and I've bored you with my short story ideas among many other things, and I'm kind of curious. You're always a very optimistic person, but artificial intelligence is obviously a hot topic technology because the capabilities are advancing so quickly. Are you an optimist about how the technology will affect humanity, and if so, why?
Yeah, I am, and I think all of us have to be, because what's been clear to me in the last 10 years is that the genie's out of the bottle. In other words, enough people know about these techniques, know their power, know the kinds of things that they can accomplish, that we're not going to force ourselves to forget. So if you proceed under the assumption that we will use machines to complement our work and our thinking as humans more and more over time, then of course we should organize how we use them to produce results that we'll be proud of. And I think it's in our best interest. And I think that typically when humans have something that ends up being good in the long run and that's in their self-interest to pursue, it usually works out well for us, because generally I think humans are self-interested, companies certainly are self-interested, and in this case, the self-interest aligns with a technology that can be hugely enabling for improving our our condition as humans, and improving the efficiency of the things that we do so that we can free up more resources to do things we want to do instead of the things that we have to do just to survive. So for all these reasons, I remain an optimist, and I hope you are too, everybody who's watching.
Of course. Jeff, this has been a blast. I think it's always great to talk to a legend in any field who has built incredible, one of the wonders of the world, and learn about how that happened, and hear about how AI was a critical part of that journey. So this has been such a gift. Thank you so much, Jeff. Thanks for coming back to TransformX.
Alex, great to see you as always, and thanks for including me.